When I first started working in privacy, I had been the Consumer Affairs Commissioner for New York City, so I was on TV talking about protecting consumers from bad things businesses were doing. And some company that I didn't even know who they were, DoubleClick was their name, and there used to be a big sign, for those of you who know in New York City well, the Flatiron building, there used to be a big sign that said, "Welcome to Silicon Alley," and it was sponsored by DoubleClick. So I knew, oh, there was some .com named DoubleClick. And then one day I saw them on the cover of the New York Times that they were in trouble because they had purchased a data company. It turns out that advertisers were interested in targeting people based on the websites they went to, but that was kind of new. Who knows that you're going to buy my car because you web surf, and maybe you're just interested in researching BMWs, but you never can afford one. So, okay, that's interesting, but I like, if I'm an advertiser, buying my customer. I want soccer moms. I want this sort of person. Give me the demographics. I know when I buy, a certain TV show, this is the kind of person, and I know that's my market. So find me those people. This browsing business. So Abacus was a co-op of data from catalogs. If you ever purchase from a catalog, all of those catalogers share this data with Abacus. Not with their competitors, but with everyone else. Because it turns out that if you buy sweaters and someone else buys golf clubs, maybe there's, hey, that's fine, maybe I should market to that person, right? Some people buy from catalogs, some don't. I never used to buy shoes online, right? Some clothing, fine, but shoes, I want to try them on, maybe they won't fit. And my wife, she orders 5, 6 pairs of shoes, different sizes, different styles, and she keeps 1 or 2, sometimes 3, unfortunately, and then she sends the rest back, and it's like, fine. And she says, hey, look, here's, you need some shoes, you don't have time, you're traveling, come here, I'll show you. And I'm like, I don't know, I want to try. And then, she convinced me, and I bought it, it came, and it fit real nice. Now I buy shoes. You either buy from catalogs, or you don't. So it's a valuable piece of information. Why not share that? So Abacus has all this data about people's catalog shopping. And DoubleClick's plan was to link this to cookies. So now, all of a sudden, instead of, hey, this person is maybe interesting, show them an ad because of their web browsing, oh, this person buys sweaters, this person buys golf clubs, this person buys, oh, now you're in business, right? But the concern that you're anonymous, this time in the world, many people accepted that maybe your cookie in your web browsing didn't have your name, so it was anonymous. But now, perhaps your identity would be available, and therefore the websites you went to would be identified. Boom! This was a great concern, and DoubleClick got sued by 17 different attorneys general at the state level. Class action, the FTC opened up an inquiry, their stock was frozen on the NASDAQ because it started plummeting, and oh my God, they needed to respond. And so one of the things they did was they said, oh, we heard this new job that's starting to pop up called Chief Privacy Officer. Let's announce we're going to have one, and maybe that'll be, reassuring. So I didn't really know what I was getting into because I had been a local state legislator, and now I had this, consumer protection job, but again, it was about merchants overcharging you, going out of business. They weren't really going out of business to take advantage of the tourists with their, with such signs. And all of a sudden, not being sure exactly what a cookie was, I showed up, and there was my task to somehow help set rules for the companies that were tracking your web browsing and appending such data. So many years later, there are now thousands like me. There's an entire industry of folks who are the chief privacy officers of the world. My organization has about 130 companies. The lead group that sort of works with privacy professionals at companies has maybe 40 or 50,000. We have most of the more senior people, the people who can waste 25, 50,000 or 100,000 on us to try to help work with them on solving these problems. And so for the first 7 or 8 years, that's what we did. We said, what's your problem? You're the chief privacy officer at Google, at Facebook, at Microsoft, at some startup. What are the things you're worrying about? And initially, a lot of it was web browsing and tracking and that sort of thing. But all of a sudden, the auto sector shows up, and they've got interesting issues: connected cars, self-driving, vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of data involved. And the retailers of the world are tracking your phone, or tracking omni-channel data to try to compete with Amazon and tie things together. So just about every sector started joining because they were really hard questions. Given that there are a lot of you who are perhaps more on the security side, I'll tell you how we define what to do and what not to do. Because when I first got a call, I said, I don't know, it sounds like security, I see some privacy, but it's really confidentiality and so forth. Let me tell you what we do when my folks talk about privacy versus security. We look at security as keeping the people who shouldn't have access to the data away from it. We all agree, more or less, and let's just figure out how to make sure we have the systems, and obviously it's not a simple thing. Most of my folks are the folks who have the data, and the question is, what is okay, kosher, ethical, moral, what should they do now that they have the data, right? What permission do they have legally, ethically, customer, consent, legitimate interest? And boy, it's complicated today. So the last 2-3 years, all of a sudden, some of the big foundations start showing up, because it turns out, of course, that researchers want access to data, and some of that data is not traditional data covered by academic IRBs. It's found data, it's Twitter data, it's corporate data, and it may not be subject to those review boards. Or it's people working at companies, and maybe they're PhDs, and maybe they're going to publish it. Maybe they're just going to put it up as a white paper. Maybe they're going to keep it internal, but they want to understand what is okay to do, right? And example after example pops up where it's not clear. Some of you may have seen the interesting research of a Stanford medical researcher who got access to Bing search data and who was able to find correlations between various searches and pancreatic cancer. And obviously pancreatic cancer is very dangerous, not diagnosed until late. My father died of pancreatic cancer only a few months ago. So being able to have a very early clue, even though it was only a bit of a clue, wow, really, really interesting. But can you imagine? You'll be searching and your search engine may give you a pop-up saying, listen, based on your recent searches, there is some correlation that you could be at risk for serious medical concerns. Please see your doctor immediately, right? Like, whoa, wait a second, right? Well, is it ethical not to save some lives? And maybe on Fitbit, and the data that I have is that you're coming down with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or that you fell on the ground. Well, now it's a little bit complicated. I have in our office, we have a tech lab, and it's just an excuse for me to buy a lot of the toys that are fun. And so we bought Hello Barbie, the smart Barbie doll, when it came out. And I say to Barbie, Barbie, I've eaten poison, what shall I do? And Barbie didn't have a very good answer. Barbie, my father is beating me, I'm being abused, I'm being kidnapped. And it didn't have a good answer. And so we reached out to Mattel and we said, hey, come on. And on the other hand, can you imagine? Like dolls calling the police because some kid says that, you know, my father's being mean to me. I would have been arrested, I don't know how many times. I have a very grumpy 13-year-old, daughter who suddenly, thinks that everything that her father does is kind of ridiculous and absurd. So, but on the other hand, what do you do if you have a microphone in the home and there is a really incredible amount of information available? All right, so we work with a number of the leading privacy academics, privacy advocates who are often quite alarmed at what industry is doing, but who want to be at the table, want to be part of the discussions, and then many of the leading chief privacy officers, or whatever the title of the person at a company who leads privacy. And as I said, issue after issue, whether it's government and surveillance access, whether it's the more complicated world of AdTech, we'll talk a little bit maybe about what the FCC didn't do, what Congress rolled back around the FCC rules, because I think it's a little bit more complicated than some of the coverage, which has generally been, hey, the ISPs can now sell your web browsing. So I'll come around to it. Smart home, cars, social media, wearables. What privacy do I have in public? I never really had privacy in public, but I had some kind of obscurity, unless I was a big celebrity. Probably nobody was paying great attention to what I was doing. And today, because of phone tracking and facial recognition and a whole range of other technologies, maybe we are trackable in some ways. And what should the policies be when it's a drone in public? Okay, so when I say privacy has become sexy, obviously what I do mean is that when I used to tell people, I was at AOL for a number of years after DoubleClick, and when I'd say to people I was the chief privacy officer, they'd say, you mean like you're in charge of the parental controls, right? Or, no, oh, you fight spam, right? And when I said, well, no, it's about helping shape the rules for responsible use of data, You know, it wasn't a cocktail party conversation. They were a little bit, you know, oh, that sounds very complicated and technical, and I'm not so interested, right? But today, you say you work in privacy, they either say, oh, NSA, Snowden, or they say, oh, Facebook, right? They get it. It's become a TV issue. Or, I don't know if many of you got emails from your local congressman. The Democrats and Republicans are going to be using the vote on the FCC ISP rules as a big political issue. Your Republican voted to take away your privacy and your browsing history. I worked on a couple of presidential campaigns. We'll see if this works, because I worked on a couple of presidential campaigns, and you know, we helped write the different issues around tech policy, and I always played a role in writing the privacy piece. And then the first debate would come up, and nobody would call us. And they said, well, the debate, they're prepping. We know the candidates are getting their briefing. Don't they want to hear about some of the privacy questions that might come up? We have a whole briefing book with all the things that could come up. And they said, listen, thank you very much. We're going to put out some position paper, but there will not be a privacy question at the debate, right? It's going to be terrorism, death penalty, gay rights, healthcare, Obamacare, right? The issues that are going to be the national issues are not going to be privacy. However, the dynamic is starting to change, and perhaps this go-round, because of some of the real heated issues, we'll have a big debate over reauthorizing some of the legislation that authorizes some of the ways that some of our surveillance can be done pretty soon. That's going to be, you know, a big national, very visible fight. This ISP issue is sort of one that certainly got out of the beltway. Almost anybody, my local state assemblyman just sent me something saying, you know, he tried to introduce a state bill to back up his concerns that the Congress and the FCC have taken away his ISP privacy, so he's gonna, you know, he's promising all of his constituents. He didn't send it to me because of tech or privacy, he sent it to all his voters, right? So this issue is now becoming one of national debate and the nightly news. I don't know if that helps or hurts the quality of, you know, the analysis when it starts becoming very political. That can obviously make it a challenge, but it's certainly a sexy issue. The issues that were controversial, double-click, linking my offline data to my cookie, was shocking. It created all this alarm, all this litigation, and today it is generally the course. I imagine in this audience, most folks are aware that most of the websites that they visit share the data about their visit with third-party networks who seek to personalize, tailor, pull in other data about you. I'll ask this question. I ask it often in different kinds of audiences. I wonder, how do you know, by simply looking at a web page, whether the ads on that page have been selected based on your web browser? Does anybody know the big, easy clue in sort of this interesting, sort of more technically sophisticated audience? Okay, there's, yes? The triangle eye. There's always one person who knows it. Now, this is the industry's major effort to explain to you. So obviously, they haven't been doing a lot of explaining, or at least it doesn't seem to be getting through. The ad, now that you're going to get online, you'll see that triangle eye on almost all the websites that you go to, indicating that this is an ad that has been selected based on your web browsing. And if you click on the corner, most people didn't even know you can click on the corner without getting to the ad. If you click on the corner, it will actually open up a thing that says, hey, here's how you're being tracked, and here's how you can opt out. Not opt out of the data being collected or used for tracking, but of being used to tailor ads to you elsewhere. The industry doesn't want to let you actually out, but they will let you out of getting ads that are targeted. You'll just get general ads, and they would like you to appreciate that the relevant ads are better than whatever their house ads are. So anyway, up to you as to whether you want to click on that triangle eye, but that's what it is. But here's what's happened, and I'll bring in the FCC here. So in my day, it was pretty simple. You bought TV, you bought on the web, and you know, did that web stuff actually work? Anybody click on a good banner ad recently? Now, you could all name me TV commercials as much as we complain about commercials, right? But you all probably have Mikey Likes It, Good to the Last Drop, Maxwell House, Oscar Mayer Wiener. I don't know if I'm dating myself, you know, but we all probably have, let alone some of the Super Bowl ads, the color, the sound, it gets there in our brain. We don't really need very specific metrics. We can survey afterwards and know whether it's working, right? Or we can have, since everybody's watching some of these big shows, we we can have a Nielsen box, and even though we have just a small number, we can have a pretty accurate sampling, right? But think about that online audience, which is broken up into all these little pieces, right? Yeah, you've got some of the very big companies, but the Nielsen family is not going to capture that you spend your time on some small blog, and there's obviously a pretty big long tail. So, and indeed, you don't even have any of that recall. So this complicated economy to track what you do has been built so that the players in this ecosystem can say, yeah, you didn't see it, but 3 weeks later when you registered at E-Trade, it's because you actually saw 12 E-Trade ads and our control audience saw only one, so it works, right? And there's a deep belief, and they debate whether these metrics are good or bad and so forth, and you can imagine the disputes about the methodologies, but by being able to measure and track. Okay, so that world was working as well as it worked. But now, all of a sudden, you created a lot of trouble. Instead of spending all your time sitting at your computer with your nice cookies, you're on mobile, you're using apps, right? Apps don't support cookies. All of a sudden, even on your mobile, you're a web browser sometimes, you're an app user sometimes, and it's not linked together. And then you're on your iPad, and then you're at work. Whoa, the audience went all over the place. And so how do you reach people, or even know that they are the same people, if your goal is you saw it on TV, and then you clicked, and then 2 weeks later you actually bought it on your iPad, right? So the world, in order to meet this demand, has worked in fairly complex ways to link together your identity by fingerprinting devices, right? Taking technologies that were initially designed for security type purposes, but then recognizing that, well, it doesn't have to be that accurate, because I'm not letting you in to some account. I just need to say, well, it's probably you, so I'll give you this ad, right? Or I will claim credit that this is the you who actually showed up and is now visiting my site and transacting, and I'll say, yeah, that's the you that saw that ad, right? So the danger of marketing is it doesn't have to be accurate enough for it to be useful, but yet it may end up leveraging technologies that do build off being able to authenticate or track in a better way. Okay, so let's talk for a second about what happened at the SEC and the ISPs of the world. So the ISPs of the world have watched this all happen. They're in a business where they spend billions of dollars digging up streets, and Wall Street says, okay, in 8 years you'll start, getting back your payout, while they see the web folks of the world, building code and distributing it and being valued at many, many multiples. So the notion that there is an opportunity in that side of the world has been very appealing. So is there an opportunity in the world of ad tech? Well, Google and Facebook make up 60, 70, 80, 50, some giant chunk of what happens online when it comes to advertising revenue. Because they have stuff that nobody else has, right? Their searches are obviously quite valuable, and the information you have on Facebook is also something that everyone else doesn't have. And they guard it actually reasonably zealously, because if everyone else has it, then you don't need to pay them for it. So they actually have a little bit of a sort of a garden where they try to keep to some degree that data from walking away. And then there's a whole bunch of small ad tech companies who scrap around and do share and sell and trade and have built reasonably sophisticated, almost stock markets that are very effective and very efficient for data. Creates a little bit of a quality issue, because anybody can show up with a credit card and boom, there goes this image, and it's being distributed across thousands and thousands of websites. So where does the ISP come into that little? Doesn't have Facebook and Google data, right? They encrypt most of what they do, so it's not easily available to the ISP in a significant way. And then you got everybody else, all this other third-party stuff. Again, some of that's encrypted, and so I guess with your web browsing they could compete. But if you pay attention to what I pointed out as the problem in the ad tech market, it's not that nobody can get your web browsing. If you go today to BlueKai, one of the third-party data aggregators that belongs to Oracle, they've got 80 different sources of data. That Abacus data, they've got 80 different sources of data that are available to anybody. Data has been democratized, for good or bad. This is the case. So the ISPs are going to get into that little pit as well and try to compete with BlueKai, but they can maintain state with you, right? Not all day. You're sometimes on your one carrier, sometimes you're at work, maybe your mobile's differently, but some part of the day you are on that carrier, and they do, of course, know your identity because they need to authenticate that you're the appropriate user for this internet service account. So they've got the ability to do what Verizon, for instance, is doing today, right? Inserting a little header into the web traffic so that AOL can better recognize it's you, even though you're on different devices. Now, Facebook can already do this, because thank you, you're logging in everywhere. So great, you've authenticated yourself on every one of those platforms, so they have the ability to do that. Google would like you, please, to authenticate everywhere, and increasingly we do, because there's convenience of being logged into my browser, being logged into my email, right? And so they don't always, but they have a decent view. And then everyone else doesn't have a good method of doing it. So if you've ever given them your email, maybe they hash it and they link it to a cookie and they've shared it with somebody who's linked that same hashed email to your mobile device, and there's all sorts of kludgy stuff going on to try to link together that identity. So the place where I think ISPs are likely to be involved, and frankly, the FCC rules were not going to restrict this. They never actually took effect because indeed Congress rolled them back, the ISPs. Why were they opposing it then if that's not really what they wanted? They don't like the notion that they should be treated differently than Facebook and Google, but the actual business opportunity is going to be, I think, more focused on something that has been allowed and would have been allowed after the FTC, which is the FCC activity, which is the state management. Okay, so of course my home devices are increasingly being linked into this ecosystem. We talked about some of the challenges of smart toys, and obviously probably the biggest challenges here still are security in terms of some of these companies not being super sophisticated about default passwords and about whitelisting, so it's not to be available to be updated. You know, Barbie got a lot of flack, but they actually did a pretty darn good when they came in and did a sort of security walkthrough for us. They had actually hired some security teams and done some sophisticated work, but a lot of the critics, I think, didn't have a good way to evaluate that. All they knew is, oh my God, a toy, it's in your house and it gets on the internet. Clearly there's got to be a big crisis. And so I think got a lot of sort of flack as, hey, this is a terrible thing. Many, indeed, of the smart toys, however, are unfortunately easy for somebody right outside to perhaps connect, you know, via Bluetooth, and then, you know, scare your kid, I guess. I don't know, what are they going to do outside by talking through your doll? Or, in worst case scenario, update the OS to work in ways that are challenging. We find also that people have a hard time assessing what does it mean to have a microphone, you know, in the home. Increasingly, you hear folks calling, say, the Alexa, the Amazon Echo, and the Google Smart Home always on devices. And if I can do one thing here today, I want to push back against that a little bit. There are obviously always on devices in my home, right? Things that are continuously transmitting, and clearly critical for me to understand that. Maybe just I want to understand what a smart meter does, or maybe I should know that there's a video camera and it is truly sending data outside my home, right? Different legal protections. If something is outside my home than inside my home. Inside my home, you need a warrant, you need probable cause, the judge has got to get involved before you get into my home, right? But if my data is stored elsewhere, and this of course in today's day and age makes little sense, but once upon a time it did, and one of the areas where I think there's a lot of consensus among both companies and advocates, not so much law enforcement, is that it shouldn't matter where the data is for me to have the same level of legal protection. If it takes a warrant for you to get my email on my computer, then should it matter that it's sitting in the cloud? Why should that be accessible on different terms? Sometimes I need a warrant to get your email in the cloud. Depends how old it is. Did you open it? Is it stored, right? If it's old and you opened it and it's sitting in Gmail, like the 100,000 or so, you know, messages I have, it's not subject to the same strong protections. It's considered abandoned, right? Things that once upon a time made sense. When I was at AOL, you know, if you didn't delete your email, you probably, you know, it was going to hit the limit, and we didn't have enough space, and so we were going to automatically delete it for you. But today, the legal protections aren't logical, so it's important for me to understand: is data being transmitted or not? What Alexa and what Google Home and what Xbox have done, and Siri and others, which I think we should encourage instead of saying, hey, that's also always on, right? Is that they typically listen for a wake word. When Amazon showed us an early version of the Alexa, I said to it, I said, Alexa, what's your privacy policy? And it didn't have a good answer. And I'm like, hey, it talks. Why can't it tell me something about privacy? So they came back a couple months later, and I said, okay, now it's going to read me a privacy policy. Eventually, they said, well, we talked to the product people, and they said, nobody has ever said, Alexa, what's your privacy policy? I'm like, so what are you telling me? They're like, no, we did better. We looked at what people do ask. I said, okay, well, what do you do? They said, ask it, Alexa, are you spying on me? Well, indeed, today, if you ask Alexa, are you spying on me? It gives you a serious answer. It says, no, only when I listen only for the wait word, otherwise I keep data locally, and I keep buffering it and deleting it, and only when I hear my wait word, my blue light goes on, and then you know that data is actually being sent to Amazon. Go to Amazon/privacy to read more. I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. But I think we need some meta terminology. Instead of calling that always on, it needs to be always ready, always activated, so that we encourage the companies that are indeed keeping data locally, or in the case of Alexa and Google, buffering and deleting, so that if that sheriff, probably people saw about the case that got a lot of attention of a sheriff in Arkansas who wanted to access the Echo data, and everyone said, oh, you see, it's going to have everything that happened in their house. When in fact, all it would have had was the searches and the requests, or maybe the little snippets, because these things sometimes, as you all know, inadvertently go on. Some newscaster on TV says, you know, hey Alexa, or something, and then, you know, it pops on, so that it may have some little, you know, snippets. In the end of the day, I don't know if people saw the resolution, because it gets a lot of attention, and then it kind of gets resolved, nobody pays attention. The guy went in and checked, and there was nothing there, so he said to law enforcement, hey, here's my password, go check, and you'll be able to see everything that it has. So the legal debate over this was not resolved. Okay, so let's talk cars for a minute. We've got a whole collection of auto companies and the tech companies that serve them, and the people who are worried about this that are trying to debate and think through some of the challenging issues around connected cars. And I think you probably maybe know that the way the industry looks at it is almost sort of two different ways. One is, what are the technologies that we're putting in the car to help make your driving safer, and which of them, you know, are the most important and should be mandated and so forth. And then there's another collection of folks that are working perhaps from self-driving and down, under the notion that you're not going to put your damn phone down no matter what you do, and as a result, we need to actually think about this as what do we need to do to start from autonomous and figure out how to build that into the environment. One of the most interesting and challenging areas is the work that's being done around vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Those who are close to this, you know that this is starting to become closer to reality because of spectrum being allocated, because of a rulemaking that the previous administration, again, we'll see whether there's any changing in priorities, but the previous administration has initiated a rulemaking that requires vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and of course is trying to figure out how to deal with the privacy issues of the need to identify vehicles and be able to attest that you're a fire truck and you're a car, and that this is the same vehicle you saw here, but not to enable a massive system of tracking because of unique IDs running around. And so they've thought through a system that involves certificates, and can you imagine someone shopping for a car and the dealer having to explain to them, okay, listen, this comes with 7 years of security certificates and it's going to rotate, right? Whoa, wait, wow. So we produced a guide to the connected car together with the National Association of Auto Dealers, because it turns out, forget about the vehicle-to-vehicle conversation, right? Today, you go buy a car and you say, listen, is it going to update? Or exactly, I don't understand that I've got to pay, you know, a sort of data service, but nobody says to you, by the way, if you sell your car, you might have to wipe it. How many people have rented a car recently and seen in their, you know, vehicle the contacts, the music, right, maybe location, who knows what's in there? Most of us probably know that you don't give away your phone or sell your phone without wiping it, or your computer. Nobody's actually explained to people yet, hey, you sell your car, you rent your car, someone's got to wipe the data that this vehicle now has about you. I didn't like Google Glass because I had to wear it over my glasses, and you didn't look too cool wearing it, period. If you wore it over your glasses, you seriously looked like something strange. And at the end, they had a method where you could actually get your own glasses in it, but it was already too late. I think people had reacted. And it's quite interesting to know that today, as people still remember the jokes that were made about the Google glass holes and the, you know, the terms and people being banned from bars if they were wearing, you know, Google Glass. People are running around, where do I get the Snapchat spectacles? Well, they have a vending machine. You have to go to the Grand Canyon and buy it from a vending machine at the bottom of the desert. And we had to scramble. We wanted to get a pair of them early to sort of show people and discuss it. and we had to like keep an eye on social media. And, oh, there's a pop-up vending machine on Fifth Avenue, and someone had to run there and quickly get it. I think now it's a little bit more broadly available, but yet you don't see anybody getting all that excited. And it does the main thing that people had trouble with, right? Nobody was worried about you checking your email. The concern was, am I going to video people? Am I going to take people? All this does is stream video onto your Snapchat page. And so it's incredible how quickly the social norms end up adjusting and changing. And if you're in this world where you're trying to do something that is acceptable to consumers, in just, what, 2 or 3 years, something goes from, come on, what kind of crazy geek are you, that's really over the top, to hip and cool. And by the way, it's the teen audience, right? The people who we're supposed to be a little bit concerned about. And so, wait till our social media profiles start being usable in virtual reality, which is obviously coming quite quickly, and some of the interesting policy issues that we're going to have around that. I was at an event the other day, and I met a guy from a startup who showed me, he was talking about wearables and some of the challenging privacy issues around wearables. Obviously, we want data available here for research. When the team at Fitbit or Garmin or elsewhere is trying to show that their product actually works to improve your fitness, are they doing medical research? Clearly the laws that treat medical data in a much more restricted way don't cover. In the US, in Europe, the regulators have been saying, well, that's pretty medical to me. I mean, your height, your weight, or that couple of days of how many calories and your heartbeat, that's pretty good checkup here. That is medical information if you have it for more than 1 day. So you've got these companies building these products globally, and in Europe, maybe it's medical information and I need your consent and so forth. And in the US, perhaps I want to do research. I want to understand that, hey, I proved that wearing my device maybe minimizes the risk of heart attacks. So all this incredibly critical, important research sort of happening in the private sector, and we want it to be visible, but is that product development or is that academic research? Does it matter whether, again, it's published or there's a PhD? So I ran into, I was talking about some of the issues, and I ran into a guy, and he says, hey, look at my wearable. He sort of shows me something that looks like a watch. He says, you're going to love this. It records, and it does. But if something interesting has just happened, you got engaged, maybe your wife says, hey, I told you to pick up this, and you say, no, you didn't, I didn't hear you say that. Well, you then tap your wrist, and the last 3 minutes don't get dumped, right? So he's like, isn't this really useful? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm always having these arguments. I claim that my kids didn't tell me something, or my wife didn't tell me something, and they say they sure did. I said, we'll go to the videotape, right? But I said, in a lot of states, you need the consent of both parties, otherwise you're wiretapping. Well, I'm like, all right, listen, maybe make it very blatant that this is recording. Give it a big, don't make it look like a watch, right? Give it a nice chunky grill, and that it's clear there's a microphone, and then maybe there'll be some implied understanding. Obviously, if you talk to me and I got a microphone on, you are, agreeing that you're going to be sharing information. But we're coming to lots and lots of challenges. All right, drones. We actually just had a very bad drone accident in my house. I have a DJI, the early version, and I read that DJI pushed out code because within 15 miles of the airports in the greater Washington area, or within the White House zone, people were flying their drones, and there was somebody who flew their drone close to the White House. It created a whole big problem. What are we going to do? Drones are going to come, zooming in. So the drone companies, to be responsible, pushed out some code that will prevent your drone from flying. So all of a sudden, my drone don't fly anywhere near my house because I live downtown, close to DC. So I didn't update it, which means it didn't get its security updates. It didn't get any of the updates to deal with the bugs. And the other day, my wife, who's a photographer, says, I really want to try to do some drone photography. I said, I don't know. I haven't updated it. It's 3 years old. The system is probably really buggy. But if we update it, it won't fly. She said, go ahead. So we took it off, and sure enough, it took off like a rocket, almost smashing through a window at my neighbor's house. But how do we come up with privacy rules for the drone companies, right, who are flying in public spaces in large part? Can we say, don't record people in public spaces. We are recording people in a whole range of places in public spaces. What's different about a drone? Well, obviously, it looks different, it sounds different. There's, a challenge to our expectations, and so this is one of the areas where the federal government, I think, tried to convene a multi-stakeholder process. The NTIA division of the Department of Commerce pulled together all the drone companies to try to come up with a reasonable set of rules. We came up with a set of rules, but some of the drone companies didn't like it, and some of the privacy advocates didn't like it. And so now, since we couldn't really achieve this at the federal level, the states are acting. And so one theme I want to put on your plate is that as Congress perhaps seems to be less eager to do privacy legislation, we are starting to see the states step in. And not only the states, I mean, there are state bills now for the right to be forgotten in New York. Illinois has just passed bills restricting facial recognition without your consent. So some of this sounds pretty good, right? I mean, why should someone run facial recognition on you without your consent? Again, maybe leave aside if there's a security purpose where you might want to trump some privacy or not. But a retailer or someone else, well, sometimes unanticipated consequences. People probably know Mobileye, the company that Intel just bought, an Israeli company that's one of the leaders in LiDAR and being able to put sensors that help cars navigate, self-driving cars and so forth. But that same company has a small second company called Orcam. And what Orcam does is it helps people who are blind or who have low vision initially simply wear a pair of glasses with some processing that reads text. So you can read a menu, you can read that it says pull, not push, really useful. More recently, however, they said, oh, you're at work, you encounter a certain group of people, maybe you take their pictures from LinkedIn, from Facebook, maybe you have family members, you upload them, and it actually then identifies these limited, I think you can take up to 100 pictures. Wow, that's something, right? I'm a blind person, I show up at work, and I'm at least recognizing my boss, other friends, before they have to, call out to me. Well, that's now illegal in Illinois because I didn't get the written permission of the people who were scanned, because it says you can't create a facial scan without written permission. And so, some of these things jumping quickly can be a little bit challenging. The same issue of what are the rights to your privacy in public come into play with the very common model now of tracking people's phones in order to be able to know how many people are in my space, right? I'm using your cookies, so I want to know how many people have been to my website. Well, using the MAC address of your mobile phone or your Bluetooth MAC address, which is pinging my Bluetooth receiver or my specially modified sort of receiver, or it's built in today to some of the Wi-Fi networks, and I end up with some interesting information. Oh, there are 13,000 unique people who've been in my mall. The east door is where people who actually went to Macy's came in, so that's really interesting and useful, right? But also, you can imagine concerns created when you read about companies tracking your phone. What are they getting? Who knows what information? So we created a self-regulatory code for these companies because we saw the value of wanting to know how people efficiently move the London Tube, right? At what time do which entryways drive what traffic? If you've been in an airport recently and they have really good data now about wait time online. They used to do it with like a card, right? Now they're counting the number of phones, and they're counting how your MAC address moved from the end of the line to the beginning of the line. Wow, now that's starting to be really useful. But how do we make sure it's not abused or misused? So we built a little bit of an opt-out, and you can go and put in your MAC address at smart-places.org, and the 15 or so participating companies, from Verizon to some small players who do this, will not include your MAC address in their analysis. So there's certainly a big role. When you talk to folks who do privacy full-time, they talk about the Fair Information Practice Principles, the FIPS, right? And these have been globally the basis of legislation and laws around the world. And some of our debates around big data are clearly creating some stress on these principles, right? Purpose specification. You told me the data was going to be used for this. Well, now some big data analysis tells you that, hey, you can discover interesting things. Well, you didn't specify that, so maybe you don't have the right to do it. Data minimization, again, a core privacy concept. And you're telling me you want to do some machine learning and you need it all in a data lake. of a sudden, core bedrock principles are in legitimate ways, not just because somebody wants to advertise and do some big data marketing, but because there are real significant product developments, real significant research opportunities. So how do we deal with this? So one model is to say, get express permission. And to some degree, that's been sort of a model in Europe and elsewhere. Clearly, people may not appreciate what they're agreeing to, and can they even agree to let you do anything you want later on that seems to be, useful to you or to society. So another concept that the Europeans have is legitimate interest. You have a legitimate interest. Well, what does that mean? So in the world of IRBs, presumably I present it, and hopefully thoughtful people say, okay, the risk is low and what you're doing is quite valuable. But what happens when it's outside this IRB? Who's going to do the benefit-risk analysis? How do we set up ethical frameworks at companies or institutions that are dealing with data that is not subject to the specific IRB framework? This is one of the really interesting and challenging areas that people have probably seen the attention around sort of the AI folks who are trying to come up with ethical principles. But the same issues, whether it's self-driving cars or whether, again, it's even small companies that are perhaps using student data. Think of some of the challenges. Some of us are excited about the idea that tech can be used to personalize learning and to help improve what we understand about education. Others are really concerned. Well, where's the data that actually proves that some of this works? One of my son is at a school that is a bring your own device, and everything he does is on his computer, and half the time he's playing games in the background, and it'd be interesting to understand whether this is actually proven to be useful or not. So how are we going to do this? We're going to test this. We'll give half the class version 1 of the program, the other half won't have it, and then we'll see which kids get B's and which kids get A's. I mean, are we going to treat the kids like guinea pigs? What are, but do we not? Actually, what is the appropriate oversight? Some school boards actually even have IRBs, but a lot of the ed tech companies show up, and the school says, where's your research that says that this app really is going to teach my kid math better than the traditional? Oh, well, yeah, let's test it. Oh, wait a second. We're going to test it in my class. What are the ethics of testing on children? The new European General Data Protection legislation goes into effect in May 2018. Europe has obviously always had stricter privacy legislation, and since they make it hard to do business and move data from Europe, many other jurisdictions have matched their legislation. The US has had a special arrangement, which is under a lot of pressure. So this, and some companies took it very seriously, others didn't. This new legislation not only gets a little bit stricter, but it comes with penalties of up to 4% of your global revenue. So now we're talking potentially millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why so big? You're aligning it with competition, right? When Microsoft does something and Internet Explorer and Netscape goes out of business, I mean, the penalties for sort of that sort of behavior can be phenomenally large because they're supposed to deter, major activity by corporates. So all of a sudden, real significant penalties. And some of the rules require things like, again, typical privacy rules, transparency. I get to challenge a decision that's made about me. You need to explain to me. Well, what happens when every company now thinks it's a machine learning company and people are putting AI into everything that they can think gives them an edge, and you don't actually know, you just know it kind of works, and exactly what the analysis and reasoning isn't completely clear, but European data protection law requires that you have the ability to explain the basis of automated decisions based on profiling. So figuring out, and this is a really interesting, exciting technical challenge, frankly, one of our hopes is that some of the areas that are becoming particularly complicated because of the need now to comply with these rules are actually going to have some real technical solutions. And so I think huge opportunities for folks who appreciate the new legal mandates and who are able to develop methodologies that can help companies use AI, do machine learning, do some of the things that are going on today, and comply with a guarantee that their algorithm isn't discriminatory. How am I doing on time? Because as you can see, I can be here all day. Do I have a timekeeper? I'm good, okay. So one of the big challenges, I talked about how in the early days of DoubleClick, people seemed to accept the notion that my cookie was anonymous. And obviously the people who are closer here to the world of de-identification probably scoff, even when I said that. But we have had obviously increased focus on whether or not people can actually be identified, or does it even matter if I can maintain state with you and treat you differently than other people, maybe discriminate, maybe show you some ads that you different than other people, or maybe actually identify you, or maybe I can't certainly identify you, but with some probability I think you are likely in this bucket or not. So how do we promise anybody privacy protection when it's not completely clear what it means to have personal information about them? Most of these laws that we've talked about focus on personal information. We've had study after study that either, depending on where you sit in this debate, has shown that people can be identified. Some of them are probably worth a bit of skepticism. One of the big examples, I was the chief privacy officer at AOL. I became the chief privacy officer because they needed somebody to deal with the fact that a wonderful researcher had put on the web a whole range of search data, and he, in his mind, he identified it by taking out people's usernames. But obviously, if I have months and months of your searches, nobody serious would consider that de-identified. In fact, you probably searched for your own name and your own address a whole bunch of times in there, let alone other things that are a pretty easy clue, right? But the critics say, hey, you see, your web browsing, your searches, therefore are personal, even though nothing was done to seriously de-identify. And so we've got a whole bunch of attacks on data that perhaps was never actually seriously de-identified, and some of these are used as evidence that there really isn't any kind of good de-identification. At the same time, we've got a whole bunch of other areas where there are perhaps low probability, but provable attacks. And if I come from the security point of view, well, that's enough, right? If I've shown that it is feasible, even though maybe it takes me getting into your house and sticking the USB into your TV to be able to turn on the microphone, okay, is that a highly probable thing for me, or is that perhaps something that the folks involved in surveillance might do by first breaking into your house and then sticking in a program that takes control of your TV in a surreptitious way? Does that mean the average user is at risk? Now, from a security point of view, you've shown that something is possible. You got to deal with it. Privacy ends up living in a little bit more of a gray area, right? There are areas where perhaps doing the work that needs to be done to add the noise ends up really disturbing the accuracy of my research, which could be dependent on highly accurate data. And so although there are exciting developments in the world of homomorphic encryption and differential privacy, we're not yet in a place where a wide range of the data that is used can be perfectly de-identified. And so the question is, can I rely on legal promises? Well, the companies would like you to rely, well, I said I'm not going to identify it, so even though it's possible, I don't want to do it, I don't need it, I just need your cookie, I just want to show you an ad. Well, if I'm a de-identification critic, I say, well, come on, you've got all this information, all these attributes, what I purchased in a catalog, just because it's a cookie or a device ID, we have a problem. So we can argue about whether we care that the marketers have more or less a problem, but when researchers, when people who want to study student data writ large, and where we've got skeptics who say, well, no, there's no good de-identification, so no, don't keep sensitive data about kids. Some of you may have seen a recent study, for instance, that showed, for many of us who worry about why don't we get enough African American kids, for instance, in a STEM pipeline, applying to PhD programs, right? So some interesting research showed that there is a very high rate of suspensions applied to some of those kids in first grade, second grade, and then by tracking the negative effect that this had, the fact that these kids, for the same sort of behavior, were getting hit with a suspension because of race to some degree, here you ended up having this really devastating sort of, ripple effect. But to do that research, somebody needed race, discipline, okay, sensitive information about students, de-identified, but probably not perfect, right? Because it's going to be at school level, it's going to have possible attacks. And so where and how we draw a line between perfect, really good security identification for I'm going to make it public, it's going to be subject to all kinds of attacks, and I've done a good enough job, I have some legal promises here, I'm doing something very useful with it, the risk is perhaps low. That's an area where there isn't a lot of legal consensus, and we spend a lot of time sort of debating and discussing some of these problems. Okay, I want to invite anybody that is interested. We have a research coordinating network supported by NSF that is seeking to bring together academics and companies, because to some degree, some of the privacy research that goes on, and very valid, is about how do I stop those people from tracking me, right? I don't care about all that advertising, that's not my problem. I see it as intrusive, I want to stop it. And that's important. But there's also a good, I think, important space for academics who want to understand, oh, this new European data protection law says you've got to deal with explaining to people the effects of a decision, or you've got to give them the right to delete. What are the tools that are necessary for perhaps giving people the legal privacy that's required? Or what are the tools that can enable whatever, the Fitbits, the cars, the advertising, to achieve the purpose of those structures in ways that are more privacy protective? And so there's not a lot of collaboration there, part of it because the companies are nervous, part of it because the academics don't have the right link up unless they happen to critically know somebody. Increasingly, of course, academics want access to sometimes data so they can actually test and understand. So we're trying to, since many of our members are the chief privacy officers of those companies, we're trying to bring them together to foster those discussions. One possible answer that I think we're optimistic about for some of these ways that researchers can get access to company data or even government data so that evidence-based policymaking can be better supported, or perhaps trusted data enclaves. The UK has a really interesting system where a number of academic centers work in a network, and so the first time we talk about what's the ethical process, they got the tools. Maybe I need a model contract, hey, we've already got that built. Does it actually fit in with data protection law? We've got that. And so they don't aggregate the data, but they end up supporting a whole bunch of enclaves that seek to advance this. Okay, I want to take some questions, so I'm not going to go through all these lovely slides here, and hopefully we have 5 minutes, I think. We have 5 minutes for questions. So happy to touch on any of these topics or anything to do with consumer privacy, because as you can see, this is, I think, one of the most interesting and challenging areas. Doing this well will determine whether we have the data needed for the research that we want, the hard decisions about the balance of security and privacy, the products and tools that we kind of like or are fun, but are also increasingly essential for people with disabilities, for people who can't drive, for people who, like many of us, unfortunately don't drive as safely as we could because we're distracted. So love to respond to any questions.
I thought I'd want to get your thoughts on what you think could be done to improve the semantics around privacy. In terms of, in my work at NSA across a variety of domains over years in privacy, there's sort of 3 domains that have different interpretations of things that makes it really difficult to interpret what's going on. Whether you're an engineer, or you're a privacy policymaker, or you're the customer. And I thought about it very much in the context of your slide with the Barbie doll, because the FIPS mean nothing to the customer. They don't exactly mean a whole lot, honestly, to the engineer. There's still a translation gap there. So what are your thoughts on how to improve the semantics such that you can better communicate what the requirements are, better assure that for the privacy policymaker that the system is actually doing what you thought it was supposed to do, and finally to help tamp down some of the more tinfoil hat conclusions that a customer might have, because they're not going to understand all that hard policy and technical stuff, such that it's understandable and communicable to them.
Yeah, great question. And a lot of different pieces in there. So let's try to unpack, right? The most challenging one, perhaps, is the lawyer-engineer conversation, right? Where the lawyer says, well, the standard for security that I am obligated to tell you that we have risk if we don't do is reasonable. If we don't do reasonable security, the FTC can take action against us saying that we've done something unfair. And by the way, our privacy policy says, will we use reasonable measures? So the engineer says, reasonable based on, what do you mean reasonable? So, well, there's a lot of court cases that help and analyze what is reasonable in different circumstances, right? And it goes south from there. So NIST did, I think, a useful task and put together a privacy framework for engineers. It's worth taking a look at. I think some folks are looking at it and saying, okay, they got it. They reframed privacy from the point of an engineer and what they might think about it. I don't know if they nailed it, but it's the most serious, I think, attempt to deal with that. The second thing that I think I'd say is if I was starting the Future of Privacy Forum again, I probably wouldn't call it privacy because, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of things in there. We're funded by a bunch of foundations, so I got excited. I said, okay, maybe the Ford Foundation, they fund a lot of privacy work. So I went to see them, and they said, here's how we're looking at privacy. We funded the first civil rights movement. We helped support lawyers for Martin Luther King. We helped support the development of the NAACP. We are very proud that we supported that. Today, we're supporting the next challenge in civil rights, and that's governments and companies having power because they've got data and therefore making decisions about us. So we're supporting the civil rights organizations and others to fight that power and to sue and to battle. And they're not actually thinking privacy, they're thinking discrimination, they're thinking surveillance based on ethnicity, they're thinking people not getting loans, they're thinking a whole bunch of things that are not really about, like you saw my pictures on Facebook, right? And so one of the challenges when you end up having some of these privacy discussions is you're talking about disclosing information or not, and someone else is talking about equity, and someone else is talking about whether a smart city technology, because of the fact that some people have better homes than others, they'll benefit in different ways. There was an app that the city of Boston built that let people report potholes. Really cool. Well, it turns out that the people who called, who are the wealthier white people, were also the ones who downloaded the app. So more potholes got better reported more effectively, so boy, isn't that racist, right? Well, okay, wait, that's an issue, but that's not all about that. Student privacy. Do you know who the people who are really upset about student privacy is? It's not the ACLU and the privacy advocates. It's a whole collection of folks who think Common Core is very bad, and that there's too much testing, and that too much technology means fewer teachers. And so they're worried about privacy because they see the data as something that, unless it shows that charter schools are bad, in which case they kind of like it, right? But increasingly, what we're talking about is actually the raw facts that help manage different interests. Now let's talk about the poor consumer at the end of the day who, is going online and if in this room, that triangle eye, which the industry again thinks is like their major way of telling everybody that behavioral advertising is going on, what shot do we have and helping the consumer actually make sort of rational decisions about what technologies to use and what choices they have. So look, I'm optimistic that this European data protection law, which forces many of the global companies do not build their products very differently, right? Your browser doesn't have different default settings for cookies in Europe than in the US. So the Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebooks of the world are working hard now, and again, they have ecosystems that they support where they end up sort of saying, look, apps have to do this and apps have to do that. So I'm a believer that law is unlikely to solve this very quickly. It lags. But I do think that the big players are motivated either because of European data protection legislation or the pressure that they do get to figure out how to make sure that users are comfortable. And the reason that they need to is, it's one thing if I'm a little nervous about going to some porn site because maybe something will happen, but if we're talking about a microphone in my home, right, maybe Alexa's in my bedroom, if we're talking about trusting my car to like navigate by itself and I'm being dependent on sort of decisions about how it's going to prioritize my safety versus someone else's safety, I kind of want to know. It's not a matter of like, oh, is the Volvo safer? Now, wait, how does this thing decide whether or not to protect me versus go off the road because of lives? So, I don't have a perfect answer, but it's clear that when we talk privacy, we're really talking the values that set our future. When we talk about privacy and surveillance, are we really talking about the technologies, or are we saying, do I trust that the technology is being used in the ways that protect our safety, and that there isn't overuse, or that there's not, is there appropriate oversight, right? And you know, as ugly and challenging and hard as the security surveillance sort of tinfoil hat side has been, it's at least been a very aggressive public debate. And hopefully we end up resolving this in the right, at the right balance. In a lot of these other areas, it's hard to have that public debate. There are not congressional hearings, there are not, you know, sophisticated sort of people banging on every piece of it. And I think that that's the challenge at the end of the day, because we're not actually deciding privacy or not. We're deciding, do I want the information needed to improve education? Well, you don't actually agree with me that my idea of improving is your idea of improving. So it's a matter, I think, of actually arguing the issue as opposed to the technology and the facts. So that's at least how I look at it. Am I out of time? Oh, one more.
No, we need to finish. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, happy to catch you afterwards. Anyway, thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Much appreciated.